Good afternoon, everyone, and some of you around Australia, good morning. Welcome to the ESS Small Business webinar, COVID-19 Survival Panel. This is the session 1 for small business operators. I'm joined today by Paul Barnaby, the Australasian representative of Plan Guru, and Jordan Lowry, the Managing Director of Blackstone Business Services. Good afternoon, Paul and Jordan. How are you?
Good, Peter, thanks.
Great, Peter. Pleasure to be here.
I'll be introducing you to Paul and Jordan, who are going to make presentations in a short while. What I wanted to talk to you today about is the guest presenters. I indicated Paul is the Australasian representative of Plan Guru, which is a budgeting, cash flow forecast and projected balance sheet software company. And Paul has a real interest in prescriptive accounting, which is really looking at forecasts. What's a business going to look like in a year, 2 years, 5 years' time? And Paul will be joining you shortly. Jordan Lowry is the Managing Director of Blackstone Business Group, which is involved in workplace culture, employee behaviours, human resources, workplace health and safety, and it's obviously an advisory organisation acting for clients all over Australia. If you have any questions during today, could you please type your question into chat box, and we will ask the questions to the panel members later in the webinar. If you're watching this recording on live feed through Facebook, unfortunately you can't send your questions straight to us, but could you please send them to me, Peter, at essbiztools.com.au, and I will make sure that those questions are sent through to Paul and Jordan so that they can send you a question later on. We are recording this webinar and we will be sending to each attendee a link so that you can watch the webinar recording again if you like, or share it with your colleagues or friends in your organisation. And obviously in this era of a lot of people working from home, you may want to share it with a few people, and that is very much okay. Let me give you a COVID-19 update to try to set the scene. Today we have a budgeting expert and a human resources expert. So if you have any questions relating to budgets, cash flow, forecasts, or trying to work out where your business is going to be, how would you be able to get one of the special loans that the banks now have with money supplied by the Reserve Bank? You might ask those questions when Paul is making his presentation. And if you've got any problems about how you're handling your team members, Jordan will be able to talk to you about that. The big news is the JobKeeper payment scheme has been passed by the Australian Parliament. $130 million has been approved for this payment to assist businesses all around Australia. Applications need to be made to participate in that scheme, and the business, if its turnover is under $1 billion, which I imagine is where most people who are watching this webinar would be, you have to lodge an application to be part of the JobKeeper payment scheme. If you are a charity or not-for-profit, and as long as you are registered with the National Association, your turnover only has to have been reduced by 15%. The commercial tenants rental waivers have been introduced. There wasn't much publicity about this. There's a little bit happening now as landlords realise the implications. Whilst it was announced by the Prime Minister, this was a state territory area of responsibility, and that is why you've probably noticed in the last week each of the state and territory governments have been introducing amendments to their tenancy laws. The big qualification in this is that a tenant must have qualified for the JobKeeper payment scheme if they are able to utilise the new code which the governments have introduced. So in very broad terms, that means the business must have had a turnover drop when comparing a month in 2020 with 2019, or a 3-month period, April, May, June 2020 with 2019, of more than 30%. And then you can utilise the commercial tenants rental waivers. Boosting cash flow for employers has already started. Businesses are receiving their $10,000 or whatever amount the credit could be, and some businesses could be as high as $50,000. That is based on your business activity statements for the period ended March, either the month of March or the 3 months ended 31 March. And that is automatically adjudicated by the tax office. You do not have to apply for that registration. The apprentice trainee subsidy is in operation. That's a subsidy of up to $21,000 for a 9-month period for apprentices or trainees, calculated at 50% of the apprentice or trainee's wage for that period. The coronavirus supplement is available for self-employed people who, if they have qualified for that, will receive a payment of extra $550 per fortnight. And they will have access to funding from their superannuation funds that they can apply through the government to be able to access $10,000 of their superannuation funds prior to the 30th of June, and a further $10,000 in the 3 months, 1 July to 30 September. So the job seeker payment scheme's operational. I've already mentioned that. The other big news is the coronavirus SME guarantee scheme. Banks have started lending this money. The federal government and the Reserve Bank have made available a total of $105 billion, which is available for 3-year loans to businesses that have turnovers under $50 million per annum. The term of the loan is 3 years. The maximum amount is $250,000. There is no security. In fact, the federal government is guaranteeing 50% of the loans that have been issued by the banks, and it's at low interest rates. But you have to go through the normal application process. So you will need business plan, budgets, cash flow forecasts to be submitted to your bank. The instant asset write-off scheme's underway. That enables a business to be able to claim as an immediate tax write-off in this current financial year up to $150,000 in an individual purchase, and you can make as many of those individual purchases as you like, subject, of course, I suppose, to the business having the cash flow or the borrowing capacity to do so. There's been some changes in research and development registration. Basically, instead of having to register by the 30th of April for activities that took place in 2018-19, you now have until the 30th of September to place that registration in the system. And if you are undertaking overseas activities, and the cute word that's used is a finding, you normally have to apply for that by the 30th of June this year for the expenditure in 2019-20, as long as you have supplied some information to Oz Industry prior to 30th of June this year, which is basically your name and your contact person. The final application for that finding for overseas expenditure under a research and development program has to be lodged by the 30th of September. So if you're doing research and development, you don't have to have things lodged by the 30th of June, but you can do so if you wish. And ESS BIZTOOLS has developed its COVID-19 survival plan, which will assist businesses to get ready to survive during this process. So that's the update. I'm now going to move on and introduce you to Paul Barnaby from Plan Guru. The title that I had already given is Challenges Confronting Businesses in the Preparation of Budgets and Cash Flow Forecasts in a Pandemic. I think, Paul, that gives you a fairly open introduction to talk about how people are progressing through this whole problem with their budgets and cash flow forecasts. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Peter. I'll just share my screen. Okay. So, hope you're seeing my slides.
Yes, your screen's on there now. Thanks, Paul.
Great. Okay. So my topic today is COVID-19 business downturn. Do you need to know where your cash flow is heading? Find out in under 60 minutes.
Oh, I couldn't see it there.
Okay. I've used the word downturn, but equally I understand in the COVID-19 era, there are also upturns. But the important issue is that you do need to know where your cash flow is heading, and you don't want to spend hours and hours doing it. As Peter said, I work in predictive accounting, and the first thing I'm going to share with you is exactly what is predictive accounting. It's quite easy. Predictive accounting is simply predicting into the future the financial statements that we have to prepare for legal and other reasons in our MyOb, Xero, QuickBooks, or whatever environment we're doing. There is one important addition to that, and that is that we are actually not only preparing profit and loss and balance sheet, but also cash flow. So I'm a chartered accountant. I developed this interest in predictive accounting during my 16 years as managing partner of a second-tier accounting firm. And I now consult and assist clients in that area, which of course includes financial analysis, strategic planning, budgeting and forecasting. And it's this particular area that is so important right now as we go through this economic crisis as well as the health crisis. So just to round out my introduction, I have my own consulting practice styled Beyond Accounting Technologies. And as Peter said, I'm the regional integration consultant for Asia Pacific for a company based in the US called Plan Guru, which has a specific tool for that purpose. So I've worked with many hundreds of CFOs, accountants and people in business, and I like to think that my role is to help you look like a superstar. So as I said earlier, never more was there a bigger need for strategic plans and budgets. So if we fail to plan, we're already planning to fail. Now that's an old saying, but it's never more true today than it was when it was first mooted. Because if we have a plan, we'll be more successful. Businesses who have a plan are going to be more successful than those who don't. And specifically now that we have to plan with a downturn, with this COVID-19, obviously if we're going to be successful, we'll have to have a proper plan, as Peter alluded to. And in particular, by setting financial targets, even though they'd be vastly different to what we've experienced, and then measuring the actual results against those targets, we're going to be more focused on the strategies that contribute to success. So I'm here to help you operate like the big companies who have done this since time immemorial. So you need a budget. What do you do? And you may have already done this. You reach for Excel or Google Sheets, right? Wrong. Spreadsheets are great tools, but they were never built for budgeting. And in particular, to prepare a three-way budget, profit and loss, balance sheet, and cash flow is a very, very large challenge. If you do, be aware of this fact. There's a professor at the University of Hawaii called Ray Panko, and he's researched published spreadsheets, and he's found that 91% of them, I repeat, 91% of them have errors in them which the authors do not, maybe even to this day, know about. And if that's not scary enough, then spreadsheet budgets are going to take you 10 times as long to prepare. So why would you bother? So here's a couple of the challenges. Oh yes, my last point there. There is a choice of purpose-built tools out there. I personally support Plan Guru, but there are a number of them out there which I'm happy to comment on if you would like to ask a question. But here's an example of what I'm talking about. Here's a cash flow report, and you can see if you have a look down in the bottom here where I've got my mouse at the moment, this budget is looking at a cash flow deficit in October, November and December of around $200,000 to $300,000. And all I'm going to share with you in this introduction is by using this tool, amending the strategies for this company, we were able to get through that deficit and in fact overcome it. Also, if you've got a good tool, you'll be able to do things like have a look at your dashboard, get your key results, look at the movement, particularly in cash flow. If you have a look here in the center, you can see the cash flow forecast coming up here. We have got a net increase or decrease for the period. We've got a bit of a deficit down here, but by and large, we're looking through to June of the end of the year with a healthy $248,000 of cash surplus. So, with the challenge we've got, we need to prepare the budgets and we need to use a purpose-built tool. Why? Because as I said earlier, they must be three-way. You must prepare profit and loss balance sheet and cash flow. Unless you're a startup, which probably won't apply right now, you need to start with your known data. In other words, historic results. But here's the biggie, here's the important one. You've got to base it on drivers. When I first learned budgeting, as Peter knows, I was told use last year's figures, add or subtract a bit for next year, and that's your budget. No, it's not. Sometimes I think a good guess might give you a better result. You've got to use drivers. What drives the business? Is it the number of transactions at an average transaction value, albeit at a much reduced rate since the virus issue caught us up? Is it the investment we've got in R&D or fixed assets? Is it our wages and salaries? These are all what I call drivers, and you must use them as you build your budget. Otherwise, as I said before, you're really just guessing. You also must allow to prepare a budget, but then also look at a rolling forecast, because a budget is no good if it's put away on the shelf and left and said, oh, well, that looked nice, and that accompanied the application to the bank for the guaranteed funding because we had to do it. And no, you've got to allow budget and rolling forecast and, of course, actuals so that you can report the variance against your original budget from the actuals as they come forward. And you must be able to extract other reporting so that you can be flexible in getting the most out of your budgeting and forecasting. So you're saying, let's go prepare a budget. Peter, that's just my introduction. So I'll hand back to you now, and I'm happy to look at some more detail later on, unless there's some questions now.
Okay, well, we'll look at questions a little bit later, I think, and what I will go to now is to introduce you to Jordan Lowry. Jordan's the Managing Director of Blackstone Business Group, and Jordan's going to talk to you today about managing workplace compliance and culture in difficult times. So good afternoon, Jordan, how are you?
I'm very good, Peter. Thank you for having me, and hello to all of our people tuning in and listening to this. Peter, I think it's a really good topic. I'm going to touch on compliance, probably the briefest today, and that'll be in the second section. Okay. I really want to focus on this being culture. When we think about HR and things like work health safety, a lot of times it's how my eyes roll back in my head. It's something as a business owner that I know is important, but I just don't have the time for it. And unfortunately, It's very, very important. I would use this analogy, like our staff in our business, a lot of times are the most expensive asset in our business, but they're usually the most valuable as well. They're our means to make money and grow our business and engage with our clients. And a big thing is, like, if you were a taxi driver or a truck driver and your taxi it needed maintenance, or your truck needed maintenance, or it needed a service, it's the first thing you do because it's your money maker. And the same is true with our staff. And one way we do that is by culture. And I think culture is one of the most exciting sides of human resources out there. And I want to talk about that today. So I was actually thinking about the current situation as business owners that we really face now. And that is, guys, we're at war with the pandemic. And our businesses are at war financially. We're at war, and it maybe draw some parallels, but from an amazing guy who was a famous U.S. general, and he was the 34th president of the United States. His name was Dwight Eisenhower. So he was actually known for being quite humble. He was a collaborator, not an instigator, when it comes to the way he managed troops, and he always took the long view. That was evident in some of the legislation. He played the long game so that some of his legislation could be passed at a later date. And I thought about that, and I thought, do you know what? That is exactly what we need to do now. We need to be leaders. We need to be humble, but we also play in the long game. We've heard, this is 3 months, this is 6 months. And one thing that, the thing that actually drew me to Dwight Eisenhower, early days and when I've been training and doing culture training with businesses, was he was known for his quality of leadership as probably the most important thing. So what he used to do, he would get when he was a general, he would get his superior officers or the commanding officers, and he would get them all into a tent. And in the middle of the tent, on a table, he would actually he would pile up chain. And with that chain, he would ask them, whilst it was in the middle of the table, he would say, if I push this chain, what way will it go? And he'd get all these different answers. And he would say, well, none of the answers were wrong, but none were right either. Because what happens is when you pile chain on top of itself, it can become quite unstable, or it is unstable. And when you push it, it can go anyway. And he said, your men are exactly like that. You push them, there's no telling which way they will go. But he said, if I do this, and he grabbed the end of the chain and he walked with it, he said, if I pick up this chain and walk with it, what happens? And they would all say, well, it follows. And that's exactly what he wanted his commanding officers to do. He said, if you lead, they'll follow. And in the current times that we're in, with amidst this pandemic and the stresses, these new stresses for a business owner, it is a perfect opportunity for us to lead our teams. And the best way to actually lead our teams is to understand how they are actually feeling right now. And I think a term that we could use for ourselves as business owners in a lot of instances, and for our staff and our employees, many who are working from home now, is it's stressful. There's a lot of the businesses we work with have had to make reductions in hours, some to salaries. So there's undue stress on these staff members. It's funny, the way stress actually works in the body. So our body actually naturally produces a stress hormone called cortisol. But I wanted to share with you, there's an amazing guy called Simon Sinek. If you get the chance to look him up, he speaks about how stress actually works in nature, or cortisol works in nature. So that natural stress hormone. So it's designed to initiate the fight or flight in an animal or in a human. And what it does is, so an example of that in nature is, you've got a herd of gazelle, and one of the gazelle actually hears a noise, and it thinks it's a lion. So what it does, bang, its ears pop up and it floods its body with cortisol. So what it does is, so that it can summon all the energy in that gazelle's body, so that if it needs to flee from that situation or to fight, what it will do, it stops things such as hair growth, nail growth, and the immune system. That's what it does in humans. And it floods us with this stress hormone so that we can get out of that situation. The funny thing about cortisol, though, is if the gazelle sees another gazelle that's stressed, who doesn't hear the initial sound, but in the end it sees the lion, that's what it's designed for. Then the whole herd can make it safely and they live another day. When we parallel that to the workplace, it is exactly the same. If someone is stressed, if your staff see you as the leader as stressed, or they see another staff member who's unsure of their situation and what the future holds, or if there are redundancies coming, they stress. And I'm telling you, it will spread through your workplace, just like it does in a herd of gazelle. And the last thing we want is, at a time like this, employees, that are fleeing from our business, or probably the biggest concern is their health. Okay, so you heard me mention before, it shuts down our immune system. And the way cortisol works is we have a healthy level in our body every day. So what it does is when we wake up in the morning, that's when our cortisol levels are nearing their highest, because as we wake up, we hit an awakening phase. And usually when we have our first coffee, we're like, oh, I've got that energy for the day. It's actually your body releasing a healthy amount of cortisol, and that's designed to boost you and give you the energy to get through the day. And what happens is it drops off, and it gets to about 6 o'clock in the evening, a resting phase where we should have zero levels or minimal levels of cortisol in our system. We wake up tomorrow and the same thing happens again. We wake up the next day. What happens though is we're now understanding that stress is potentially going to be one of the, up to, they say by 2030, it will make it. This is Professor Zoltan Sanyai from up at JCU, and a lady called Natalie Madison out of Wollongong University. So she works out of Wollongong. They're saying that by 2030, potentially 1/3 of all illness in the world will be stress related. So it's quite scary, because the risk that we've got with our staff is if they don't understand what the future holds for them in their roles, or there's a lack in communication, they have this awakening of cortisol in the morning, okay? But what happens, they go into that stressful work environment. And the funny thing about cortisol is if you have extra cortisol in your system, okay, initially when you get that flood, it's designed to enter quite quickly and then exit quite quickly. But in the instance of the awakening and the body actually slowly releasing that drip, drip, drip of cortisol, and stress over a long period of time, it doesn't exit quickly. It actually exits the body at the same rate. So when we get to that resting phase at 6 o'clock where we should have no levels or zero or to minimal levels, we're actually going to bed with elevated levels of cortisol. So when we wake up the next day, it's a compounding on top of that. And the people are going to be more susceptible to things such as viruses, sickness, and we tie that back to sick days and things like this. So culture is really important in your business and reducing stress. And one of the keys to having low levels of stress in a business is communication. And at a time like this, where a lot of our staff are working remotely, okay, they're working from home, they don't have that interaction that many people thrive off, peer to peer, where they can go to a team meeting and they're around other people. It takes a really, really unique character that can work at home for an extended period of time without interaction with other people. So I look at that and I say, if your situation in business, or even if your business is working together and your collaborations, if you don't have them, on a daily or a weekly basis, and you're not touching base with your staff, something to really consider. If you're in the situation where your staff are working remotely, I put this question to you: when is the last time that you dropped in on a Zoom meeting? You had a team Zoom meeting. A lot of businesses are either having wines over Zoom or beers over Zoom on a Friday afternoon, so that they can at least get that peer-to-peer interaction. Talking on that topic of communication as well, and where it comes into culture, and it makes it interesting, is if employees don't have all the facts, and if there's a lack of transparency, and it could be something like JobKeeper that we've been speaking about, if they don't know they're going to qualify, they don't have the access to the sources that we may do through our accountant as well. And employees don't assume they're always going to Google it. So a lot of times there's going to be some blanks. And one thing I've learned, that if someone doesn't have all the facts and the information, whether it be in business or in life, they usually will fill that blank with the worst case scenario. And I think that moving forward as a business owner, you've got to realize that is a natural human tendency. So where you think that there may be blanks or gaps, transparency and communication is key, because they're going home to their wife or their partner, or she's going home to her husband and their kids, and they are thinking, like, is my job going to be safe? So as a business owner, where you can give a surety, do that, because a lot of times the business owner will like, yeah, it's going to be okay. But I really am stressing, share that with your teams. Give them the information, because they're going to make their decisions and their future decisions about their future based on the information that they've got on hand. So I think that's really important. Going back to Dwight Eisenhower, okay, he was known, he said, you've got to be the chief morale booster. As a leader in that business, that's really important. He was actually known for always making a point of visiting the troops. And he actually spent many, many hours. It was with the 101st Airborne Division the night before they stormed beaches in Normandy. And so he encouraged a lot of troops that way. I want to share a quote with him just before I leave on this topic of culture. Dwight Eisenhower said, I'll quote this: "I did my best to meet everyone from the general to private with a smile, a pat on the back, and definite interest in his problems. As a business owner, you need to do that. If you want a strong culture in your business, I'm telling you, drop in on a Zoom meeting, have a one-to-one meeting, see how your staff are doing, okay? If it's in business and you work in an industry where you're still at work, you're one of the essential services, you should still be doing this and usually we would have a quarterly catch up or a check-in. If you're waiting every quarter to touch base with your staff and to show personal interest in them, I can assure you culture can be better. So there's some things that I would really think about that, ponder on that, because the communication, the relationships that you have with your staff are imperative. I know Virgin's in a bit of, they're having a rough time at the moment, but Richard Branson always said that, like, you look after your staff, they look after your clients. And that's the key to the business. So look after those staff first. Do you know what I mean? We're in times of war and everyone needs that support. And in this instance, you're their leader and their general. So I hope that you can take something away from that today. And yeah, over to you again, Peter.
Okay, thank you very much, Jordan, for that comment then. That's very interesting when you're looking at culture, isn't it? It's so important in these difficult circumstances that virtually every business in Australia is operating at present. Don't forget, if you have any questions or comments, can you please type them into chat and we'll talk about them later in this presentation. I now want to welcome back Paul Barnaby from Plan Guru. Paul's going to talk about predictive accounting in conjunction with Plan Guru's software to plan the future with confidence. So Paul, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thanks again, Peter. And yes, I just might share my screen again, if I may.
Okay. So you're on the screen now.
Thank you.
And your slides are up. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. Yeah, just a refresh of what I mentioned earlier about what is contained in a successful budget. And I won't go over these issues again, but what I did want to show you was how the tool that I use, Plan Guru, actually satisfies those requirements of successful budgets. So if I just swap now, and I mentioned drivers before, Peter. And so the example I'm going to share with you today is a computer company. And if you just have a look at the screen here, this is from Plan Guru itself. And where we started with this company was their key driver, which was the number of sales that they were going to have. And we wanted to divide that across the main product range, which was computers, PCs, box only and complete, printers, multifunction printers, laser printers, Microsoft software, other software, and a couple of accessories, keyboard and mice and webcams. So here you can see I've got a table of the units that we're proposing to sell across those months. But it goes a little deeper than that even, in that I've been able to ask Plan Guru to start from a total predicted for the year of 2,200 units. Please allocate this across the year, but use seasonality. And so what I've done here is used a seasonality. This particular computer company under normal conditions got 40% of its sales in only 3 months of the year. So if you have a look here, they're expecting to sell nearly 300 units a month of the PC box only in the high months and 147 units a month in the low months. So that's where we started, and that translated into the income statement here. And if you have a look at the sales of PC box only, you can see I've used those unit sales and I've used a price of $450. So that is a typical example of a driver. I'm doing that revenue line projection based on those units varying across the months at a price of $450, and that's given me those monthly sales of $66,000 a month in the low months, or nearly 132 in the high months, and 990 against for the year. So Peter, what I'll do, there's not time permitting today to go through a full breakdown of how Plan Guru works, But you'll remember I said the three-way is important. So there's our budget for the profit and loss, if you like. We're expecting a revenue of 3.5 million, a gross profit of 1.1, and a net profit after tax of just under 300,000. In the balance sheet, I've looked at drivers this way. For example, accounts receivable is based on a collection rate of 70 days. And that goes across our revenue lines. If you've got different collection rates in your business for different revenue streams, Plan Guru will look after that also. In the case of inventory, I've said to Plan Guru, please tell me what the prediction is going to be if we carry an average of 120 days of stock on hand. And across on the other side of the balance sheet, we've got accounts payable drivers at 45 days based on our purchases of stock and overheads. And then we've got other drivers and other facilities such as the loan facility. Of particular interest is the bank account, and we've set that up, which has got a limit of 500,000 across the period. But you'll see here that in my budget, it's showing the limit has been reached, and up here we've got a cash deficit of nearly 300,000. And that comes from the cash flow side of things, which I'm showing you here, where you can see that we've got a cash provided by operating activities, then we've got investment and financing activities. But more importantly, we've got this deficit here. Now, what we actually were able to do as a matter of strategy in this case was to say, we can't go over that 500,000 limit. How are we going to manage that? We manage that by ensuring that the stock level in those busy months actually drops from 120 days down to 90 days. So if you have a look up the top here, here's my negative cash. If I put that revised driver in there, 90 days stock on hand for those 3 months. In other words, we don't buy at our normal levels while the stock is going out the door rapidly. Watch what happens when I click OK. That deficit has disappeared. My bank overdraft's within its limit. And if I go back to that cash flow report, you can see here that we're now forecasting surpluses coming up in February, March, April, May, June, coming up to 172,000 at the end, which of course is matched with the cash on hand that we've got in the balance sheet there. So Peter, there's a whole lot more to Plan Guru than that, as you know, but those are the key issues. The only other thing I quickly wanted to show you was that you can put in ratios. There are typical ratios there so that you can look at things like profitability, leverage, efficiency rates, etc. And you can also create your own. But that's an example of how we can use a tool, use those drivers, particularly now in the COVID-19 situation where we can look at revising the drivers going forward. It might be a complete rethink on the business, but a tool like Plan Guru will do it for you. So there you go, Peter. Again, any questions on that, put them up at the appropriate time and I'd be happy to field them.
Paul, let me just phase a couple of questions to you if I can.
Yep.
Andrew Geddes spoke last week to accountants. Andrew's a well-known accounting consultant and was chair of a listed public company for 9 years, Green Cross Limited. And Andrew was talking about some of the work that a few of the accounting firms that he's still involved with as chair in helping their clients to access the federal government guaranteed loans that are currently available. There's a pool of money being put together by the Reserve Bank, $105 billion. Just I can remember when I was at college, I think we had a debate one night over a few bottles of wine trying to work out what a billion was. And now we just, that just wraps off our tongue, doesn't it? $105 billion. Now, Andrew indicated that they put together, this was for a grazier client who was able to utilise that money. They put together a dot point business plan and a budget and cash flow forecast. So do you just want to give a brief overview of what that process might have looked like, or how you would have gone about it using Plan Guru?
Okay, I think the important thing is that with loan applications, even though it'll be the government guaranteed one, you will have to have a business plan. And that can't just be a back of an envelope prediction of what might be going to happen. It's got to be backed by the science. So again, I don't like to hammer the point of the drivers, but when you can back your application with drivers, it might be a cafe, the number of customers that they've got coming in the door. It might be the takeaways that they're doing because they can't have their business open for dine-ins. So those drivers are all important. And then it comes back to converting that. And I'll just share my screen again, if I can find the icon. I'll just share the screen again briefly. No, I've lost it, Peter. Just hang on. No, I won't bother about it. The numbers.
You want me to do it? I'll just do it.
You can share mine?
No, it doesn't look like it's coming. No, okay.
Okay, just hang on.
We've gone back to you now, Paul.
Yeah, okay. No, if for some reason my share screen button's not coming up, I don't know why. Anyway, that was the issue. If you've got drivers that support those predicted financial statements and profit and loss, balance sheet and cash flow, the banks are probably, even if they grant the loan, they're probably going to want progress reports. So they'll want to see variance reports. So again, you need to, it's got to be a continuing process. It's not, as I said before, just preparing the budget. The bank said, yeah, that's fine, put it on the shelf and never look at it again.
Yeah.
It's got to be part of the continued management strategy process.
Yes, thanks for that, Paul. And I think this is very important because this particular webinar is obviously targeted at small businesses and medium-sized enterprises. And I think it's very important that they understand this, those people understand this process.
I think the last point I'd make, Peter, is while a lot of small businesses may well have their accountants equipped to do that, tools like Plan Guru can actually be used by the business person themselves. They don't have to be a qualified accountant to do it. Helps, but they don't have to.
Yeah, and I think that's very important because people need to understand what's happening in their own business, don't they?
That's right.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. We might we'll rejoin you a little bit later on, if that's okay. No, we might just move now on to reintroducing Jordan.
Yep, I'm here, mate.
So perfect. Jordan's now going to talk about assistance that Blackstone can offer businesses to overcome some of the issues relating to team members meeting the challenges of COVID-19. When we planned this webinar, I know as a consultant and accountant that a lot of businesses might not have a human resource consultant like Jordan Lowry to assist them. So Jordan, can you give an overview of how you would help some of our businesses that are viewing this webinar? Thanks.
Absolutely, Peter. And I think this is, COVID has taught us, there's a few things that it's taught us, or it's taught a lot of business owners. Number one, it's good to have someone there when there's questions from a HR point of view. I remember when the initial impact of COVID hit, there were a lot of people who we went before the government changed the legislation. There was redundancies, there was stand downs, and people didn't understand that you could stand down employees under Section 524, subsection C of the Fair Work Act if there was no reasonable work for them to do outside of, and it was due to an event that was outside of the employer's control. So having someone that you can turn to there can save you, and it saves employers a lot of sleepless nights. But I think it's been evident that the help and business owners have helped each other throughout that time. But this downtime that a lot of business owners are now seeing, it is a really good time to see if COVID taught you if there are any bottlenecks in your business. Did we have strong policies and procedures, or is this time something that we can utilize to consult and actually put in place policies, procedures, up-to-date employment contracts, or a work health safety system? On that, you heard me mention before, I said I would talk about just compliance briefly. So compliance as well is a lot of businesses are saying where there's capacity, employees work from home. But under the work health safety legislation, it is actually a mandatory requirement that you as a business go in and inspect that workplace, because it is actually viewed, even as though it's their own home, it is an extension of your workplace and it is considered a workplace. So things like that. Do they have a first aid kit there on hand? Do the employees understand like the ergonomics setup? Is there an ergonomics policy in your business? So tying those things in, it's just a good, it's a good tool to actually say, how strong are the legal foundations in our business? What does that look like? And that's where we really step in, Peter, is to say, you don't need to do anything in that process. You just need to tell us the knowledge of your business, what your culture is. And from there, we can collate those documents. You can have a HR system. You can have a work health safety system. You can do that for under $3,000 plus GST. I think we're running a special at the moment for $2,700 plus GST, and that includes absolutely everything, no matter how small or how big your business is, including implementation. And that's vital, because when we get to the other side of this, and we play in the long game, like Dwight Eisenhower, there will be another side of this. And I think we're going to see, it'll be a changed workplace. Everything's going to be changed. I think that's a perfect opportunity to, as we enter those, in those exciting new times, on the other side of this, let's do it with compliance not being an issue. Let's not be stressed about it. And that's what we can do. We can take away that stress. We can be that person you can turn to when you do have a question. And you go home, you get that answer on a Friday afternoon. I don't know how many clients I do that for personally still. When I step in and work in the business, or they call, it's Friday afternoon, they're stressing, what are we going to do? And we're like, what? It's actually not that, it's not that big a deal. What we can do, Monday morning, we're going to do this, this, and this. And you know what? They go home, they're in a better mood when they speak to their husband or their wife or their kids. They're not going to go home and kick the dog with a cat. It's really, really good. And that's the peace of mind I like to give. And that's why I'm in this business. I really enjoy it. So that's what we can do. Use this time to actually have a look at your business, reflect on it and say, is it strong? How long has it been since it's been updated? And if put to the test, would it hold up? My job is to mitigate risk for business owners. On that too, Peter, if someone does have a policy or they've got handbooks or contracts that they want reviewed, I will give you my word right now. If you send that through to my email address, there's no obligations there. I will review your policies and procedures and your contracts and give you some honest feedback at no charge. I think that's really important. Someone that can just give you feedback. If it's great, I'll be the first person to tell you that it's great. If there's small changes, I'll let you know what they are. And then the rest is up to you. So that's how we'd love to help. This is all about helping business owners, helping each other in these tough times. And if that's a little thing we can do for you, I'm happy, man. So Peter, over to you. Right?
Okay, Jordan, I just had a question which I might put you to now because we've got a bit of time. With this concept of working from home, I gather from what a few people have said to me, 2 or 3 employees are wanting to meet at one of their houses. What potential risk is there for the employer if that's happening?
The first thing that I would say is like with technology that we've got these days, like why increase the risk? I know there's a couple of ways you could look at this. You could say, because I've been talking about team interaction and that positive interaction, and there is no interaction like face to face. However, when we're talking about the physical ramifications of this pandemic and flattening the curve, we would have to we draw the line between you'd weigh it up logically and talk about whether it's a sensible decision. Okay, I think that's the biggest thing. If there are people that want to work, you can make that decision. If it's within the laws, they can do it. But realistically, are we increasing the risk, and what is the true need for it? If they said, you know what, I'm getting this, like the Zoom meetings are not enough, like, do you know what I mean, of mental health issues and stress, even probably before putting our own employees in a room together. I'm not saying it's wrong, but you may even say you want to take a bit of sick leave or something like that. But this is really like we're on. Our lockdown restrictions aren't as strict as places like New Zealand, but there's a reason for it. And the reason we're working from home and we're not working from the office with 3 people in the office is for that exact reason. So I would, this is about inquiry and speaking with the staff and say, like, why is it that you feel that way? They may give you an answer you've got a solution to. So Peter, I know it's a really long-winded way to go about that, but it's a touchy topic. So, but we're working from home for a reason. So let's utilize technology and the tools on hand to increase those interactions. Maybe there's not enough interactions on a day-to-day basis. Okay, maybe they feel that they're missing out on that communication. Increase it. So little things like that. Hope that answers the question, Peter.
Okay. Righto. Well, what we might do is just go into a shared view here, if we can. I don't seem to have any questions that have been submitted, but there is a couple that do come to mind. Paul, businesses, I think, are starting to realise that the banks have got access to this $105 billion, and the Commonwealth Bank has already announced that they've lent 150 million. And I was interested to look at the figures. About 1,800 loans they'd processed, and when I saw this year's report was probably 5 or 6 days ago now. But 1,800 of those, they'd approved 1,800 applications, but 70% were out of the state of New South Wales. Now, I was born in New South Wales, but I don't live there now, and I don't mind New South Wales, unless they beat Queensland in rugby league, of course. But does that mean that people were not getting organised in the other states in getting their applications? Because the Commonwealth Bank's pretty well spread across Australia. It just seemed a strange statistic to me, or are they feeling it more? But beyond that, what do you think, if businesses are watching this webinar and they think they would like to get access to $250 million from an accountant and a predictive accounting viewpoint in particular, they've got to repay this money in 3 years under the terms of the loan. They've got to still go through the normal application process. The Reserve Bank has made that a condition of the lending, normal lending criteria is to apply. And they might want to utilise a product like Plan Guru. What would you be suggesting to them?
Okay, thanks, Peter. Well, firstly, to answer your question about the 70% for New South Wales, I can't answer for the other states. Maybe they are not as organised as businesses in New South Wales. But I think the essence of it is you must know where your business is heading. And while the numbers that I looked at in the earlier slides and presentation were only looking at a 12-month period, you've got to look out many years in some cases. Well, 3 years, I think you mentioned, for the payback.
Yeah.
With a tool like Plan Guru, you can look out 3 years in detail. You can examine it month by month. I'm actually working on a assistance project at the moment for a Plan Guru user where we're breaking the cash flow down to weekly, and in some cases days in the week, because that's how critical it is. So I guess I'm a bit like Jordan, this is a bit of a long-winded way around the heaven, but you've got to have the ability to say, what ability do I have to repay in 3 years? If it can't be in 3 years, maybe it's 4, given that these are the drivers of the business and these are the indicators that are coming through in those cash flow predictions. Because that's what it is, it's a prediction. And again, I come back, if you're going to make an application to the bank, make sure it stacks up. I have seen budgets that have been put to banks that I wouldn't let out of my office, no way. So you've got to make sure that it's not only answering the bank's requirement, but as a business owner, it's answering your requirement. Can you use it to run your business? Thanks, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Jordan, have you got any other issues relative to that very broad subject area that you're involved in that you'd like to comment on?
Not at this stage, Peter. I think it's, I think this is just a time to tell business owners and everyone, just, these are times, stay safe, be smart. Paul's had some really good points there on planning. This is if there is downtime in your business, or you can look at bottlenecks. I think you heard me mention before that the landscape, the other side of this is going to be vastly different. There are going to be a number of your competitors who are no longer in business, and it's going to be exciting. So the idea is we get from point A to point B to the other side of it, and the people who will succeed the most and the fastest on the other side of this are the people that have strong structures and systems in place so they can hit the ground running. So even though we might be trading through now, when it picks up, the people that have, that their planning sorted, their business planning, their budget sorted, like Paul said, you got your systems in place from a HR point of view. You're going to be you're going to be, and you've got an induction sorted. when you've ticked those boxes, you're going to be the first person that's happy to recruit. You know what? Let's get these good people on. There's going to be a lot of people coming on the market too. Like we don't touch on recruiting too much, but I come from that background as well. And there are going to be a lot of good people looking for jobs. You want the cream of the crop. Be confident to hire. Make sure those things are in place. So they're probably the takeaways, but it's common sense. But this is just a little reminder to use the time and flip the situation to your advantage. I think I'm always a positive thinker, and that's what this is. Like, be optimistic about this. Use COVID. Look at and Paul's been talking about business planning. That's exactly what I do with my business plan. We plan for the worst and we plan for the best. And we have a situation. We go through each situation, and I look at it and how can we use this to our advantage? If you're not looking at your business now saying how can we actually use COVID to our advantage, you're behind the eight ball. Your competitors will be in front of you. So use this, get it done, and you will be successful. And I'm really keen to hear the results of some of the clients out there. So thank you very much for listening to me today. It's been great.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Paul and Jordan, as we did that overview. And I'll just
Thanks for having me along, Peter.
this screen again. Yeah, we'll just go through a couple of things about next week, if that's okay. The next panel that we have is next Wednesday, the 29th at 12 noon. This is again just targeted at small businesses and medium-sized enterprises. And we have a business consultant that's joining us next week, and that's Jeff Goodrich. I've known Jeff for about 16 years. He's a well-known consultant, advisor, ambassador, business operator in the Northern Territory, Northern Queensland and Northwest Western Australia. And one of the major organisations that Jeff's involved in is a 400-member Territory Proud organisation, which is a promotional organisation in the Northern Territory. Jeff tells me that he's a good user of accountancy services, so he's going to make some comments for business operators on how you should be using accountants to guide you through this process. The other keynote speaker is Priscilla B. Smith. Priscilla's from Brisbane, and besides being an accountant, she runs training courses for bookkeepers and for accountants to become tax agents. So it's an interesting business she has in communicating with people, some of whom could well be your staff. If you've got a bookkeeper and you'd like that person to be able to lodge your own business activity statements, you could encourage him or her to undertake this training course. But as a practicing accountant, Priscilla is very much aware of what's happening in the marketplace. Her clientele's primarily small business and medium-sized enterprises. So she will be able to give you an update. And I'll be back again to host the webinar. To register for next week, the 29th of April, please go to www.esssmallbusiness.com.au/webinars, and we'll be able to welcome you to that presentation. Thank you for your participation today, or thank you for viewing this webinar, because we are going to be sending this to thousands of small business operators that we have on our databases and that our affiliates have on our databases. And both Paul and Jordan are our affiliates within the ESS BIZTOOLS organization. So I do thank you, Paul and Jordan, for joining us today. And for our viewers, whenever you happen to watch this webinar, good luck. It is a difficult situation, but you've heard some very good advice today as to how you might be able to navigate these challenges. If you want more information, please go to our website, www.esssmallbusiness.com.au. Survival in Difficult Times. That's the product package we've developed for small businesses. Learn more, and you'll be able to get the information you like there. Or you can contact us. Send me an email, peter@esssbiztools.com.au. If you have a question for either Paul or Jordan, can you email it to me and I will send it on to them. And what we're going to do is on our small business website, we're going to list those questions and the answers that Paul and Jordan and the subsequent speakers come back and give us, so you will be able to look at them. Or if you want to make a phone call, please ring me, 1-800-232-088. And finally, please stay safe. Jordan has referred to this need to make sure that social distancing's been observed even when working at home, and trying to get the whole system, everyone through this crisis so that we can all get back to work. I think there's going to be some exciting opportunities in the not so different distant future. The Prime Minister's talking about perhaps some of the regulations can be relaxed in 4 to 5 weeks' time. That would be great, as long as we don't go too early, because we don't want this virus coming back to catch us later on. And in closing, have a great day. Thank you for being with us today. Goodbye.